My name is E. Swift. Welcome to the At the Speed of Life album. Have my man Taz from the Liquid Crew, All Stars. And the man at hand, the man none other than my man Xzibit. And thank you for buying the album, which you will definitely be proud of. With all the fat joints that you could ever think of making, they on there.
Xzibit was born as Alvin Joiner on September 18, 1974, in Detroit, Michigan. Xzibit and his 4 siblings were raised in a single-parent household because their parents split up and his dad left the family at an early age. Unfortunately, his mother passed away when he was only 9 years old, and he had to move to Albuquerque, New Mexico to live with his father. During a Breakfast Club interview, he said that only a couple of months after his mother's death, his father got remarried, which he didn't like at all, and at the time, made him really angry. To cope with his mother's death, at the age of 13, he started to write rhymes and poems. It was something I enjoyed doing. I like to put words together. It was easy for me, I just stuck with it. According to Xzibit, his first rap name was Icy. Living in New Mexico wasn't the easiest. His father was a strict parent, given that he was a Marine. But X didn't like discipline, to say the least. Despite his early passion for music, he found plenty of time to goof around. When he was 14, Xzibit started to get into serious trouble with the law. He and his friends started to sell drugs, more specifically, crack cocaine, and were getting arrested from an early age. After being kicked out of his home, several Albuquerque high schools, and multiple stints in state custody, at the age of 17, Xzibit decided to pursue his career in music and move to Los Angeles, California. He understood that if he continues to live that life, he will either die or be in prison. The change in environment was life-saving. Xzibit left his old friends and bad habits behind and set about finding a new set of friends who would inspire him to stay on a better path. He arrived to Los Angeles with only $3,000 in his pocket, and as he recalls, although he was starving most of the time after his arrival, he was happy to be there. Little did he know that moving to LA will be the best decision he made in his lifetime, and that only a couple of years later, he would become one of the most respected rappers, not only on the West Coast, but worldwide. A fresh new start in Los Angeles wasn't the easiest for Xzibit either. While moving out from New Mexico was life-saving, when he got to California, he had to put some food on his table. Thus, for a short period, he got back into his old ways. When speaking to Interview magazine, he recalled, "When I went out to California, I was still doing the stuff that saw a lot of my friends killed or put in prison. But I got a job in the car wash and just started hitting underground clubs, doing a cappella because I didn't have a track or a DJ. Thankfully, Xzibit quickly managed to establish himself in the underground scene and became somewhat of a celebrity in the West Coast. At the time, he went under the name Xzibit A. His status let him make a lot of connections, and soon, fellow rapper King T took notice of Xzibit. According to Xzibit himself, King T was the first guy who looked at him and said that he had potential. T took X under his wing and started teaching him how all the business of the music industry works. During the Breakfast Club interview, he mentioned that King T and the Alcoholics were the first ones who he met that were signed to a label.
King T is the first guy who looked at me and said that I had potential. He allowed me to come around them and kind of like that. I learned how to, they were the first cats I met with record deals.
These new connections presented a lot of opportunities for Xzibit. He began his career as a part of Liquid Crew, a loose-knit collective of California rappers, including King T, the Farai, and the Alcoholics. Xzibit was consumed with idealism, and he possessed an innate talent that was enhanced by his presence. There was nothing fake about him. Xzibit's rhymes resonated because he spoke from the heart as an individual, rather than trying to portray a phony hip-hop persona, so his raps were primarily about his own life experiences. Plus, he was never afraid to be himself and showed that to the world. In 1994, he made his debut appearance on King T's song called Freestyle Ghetto.
My credentials, just hard rhymes and instrumentals. Xzibit smashing when a dental with a loaded pistol.
And subsequently appeared on Hit and Run, a song on the Alcoholics Coast to Coast album in 1995.
We rip shows and hoes drop clothes backstage is fun. The shit bitches do for money.
Not only that, but he also went on tour with Liquid Crew, and when they returned in 1996, Xzibit signed his first record deal with Loud Records as a solo act. During the Montreal interview, he mentioned that he spent his first check on a Mercedes, which broke down on him only a couple of weeks later.
The first time I got a check from the music industry, I bought a car, and it was a piece of shit Mercedes-Benz, and it broke down a week after I bought it. Lesson from this, don't waste your money on fucking cars when you get signed.
The momentum was seriously starting to build up, and in the same year, on October 15, 1996, he released his debut album called At the Speed of Life. Recording sessions for this album was also quite interesting, because Xzibit up to that point had never even cut a demo, so stepping into the recording studio was something completely new to him. Years later, when speaking to Murder Dog, Xzibit acknowledged mistakes that were made on his first album. He said, "I didn't know what to expect, I didn't know what to deliver, but I put my best effort in. It made enough noise for me to come with the second and the third." The album was a success, and it earned widespread critical praise. While it didn't chart that high and only reached number 74 on the Billboard 200, the album's lead track, Paparazzi, became a popular anthem and clearly set the tone of his purpose: to expose the hypocrisy of the glam and greed of the profit-oriented rap industry.
It's a shame you only in the rap game, only for the money and the fame, extra large.
Paparazzi was released as a single track and sold more than 100,000 copies prior to the release of the completed album. The song also was certified gold in Germany and will later be used as a soundtrack in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. The album was an underground hit, and Xzibit was heralded as one of the West Coast's most promising talents. Before releasing his next album, he spent 2 years building a reputation as a West Coast underground artist, touring with Liquid Crew and also doing a tour in Europe. On August 25th, 1998, he released his second album, called 40 Days and 40 Nights. The album was once again a great success. It peaked at number 58 on the US Billboard 200, and it spawned a top 50 single, called What You See Is What You Get.
This is hard time on planet Earth. For what it's worth, Xzibit stay in rotation without rehabilitation.
All eyes were pointed at Xzibit, and he knew he needed only one small push to eventually break through into the mainstream. Well, thankfully for him, in 1998, his momentum and growth on the West Coast caught the attention of legendary rapper, producer, and the most famous doctor, Dr. Dre. According to Xzibit, Snoop Dogg was the one who linked him up in the first place.
We had interaction. I was cool with Snoop, and called me and he was like, "Yo, you know, we working on this album. I want you to come get down. I think Dr. Dre gonna do the beat. Is it cool if he call you?" I was like, "Yeah."
It's not please, is this?
Absolutely.
Okay, continue.
And so,
I didn't go front. As you said it, it came in my mind. Please.
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so then a couple minutes later, Dre called me. He tell me, you know, he had Echo Sound. You want to come through, you know, see what you got? I think the phone was still in the air when I was already out the door, man. Like a cartoon shot, I was already moving. And so I ended up going to the studio. It took me about 15 minutes to write that. And then I laid it, and then I shook his hand, and I thanked him for the opportunity. I didn't ask for who I should send the invoice to. I didn't ask, you know, what the publishing is. I didn't ask what the split. I didn't give. Thank you, Dr. Dre. I appreciate it.
And you knew it was for his album?
Yeah, he said it was for Top Dog. Yeah, this for Snoop's album. Like a week later, you know, a couple weeks later, Snoop called me. He's like, "Hey, nephew, you know we using that as a single." I was like, "Oh shit!" Then I was like, my life is about to change.
And it sure did. The song peaked at number 77 on the US Billboard Hot 100, and it finally put Xzibit on the map.
How that sound? Xzibit backing down from a conflict. The nonsense.
The song was not only a huge hit, but was also used as a main single on Snoop Dogg's fourth studio album, No Limit, Top Dog. After this single, the same year, more success followed, and he appeared on Dr. Dre's 6x platinum album called 2001, on the songs Lolo, Some LA, and What's the Difference with Eminem. He also closed the year with his acting debut, starring in a film called The Breaks. The exposure Xzibit received from joining forces with Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre broadened his fan base. He started the 2000s with the release of a compilation album called Liquid Rhymes, which featured mostly previously unreleased material from his earlier recordings. It also featured a lot of rappers like Mobb Deep, King T, Juvenile, Ja Rule, Alcoholics, Method Man, Redman, Snoop, Limp Bizkit, and more. He also appeared on Limp Bizkit's 8x platinum album, Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water, on the song Get Your Groove On.
Gotta get your groove on. Don't keep us waiting too long. Keep us waiting too long.
And on Bitch Please Sequel, which pleased too, along with Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and Nate Dogg.
Your little lungs is too small to hot box with God.
This time, the song was used as a single for Eminem's third studio album, the Marshall Mathers LP. By this time, Dre had invited Xzibit to crisscross America during the summer of 2000 with the massive Up in Smoke tour. Despite his newfound fame and all the distractions, Xzibit was working on his next project, and that winter, on December 12th, 2000, he released his third studio album called Restless. The album became Xzibit's most successful album to date, and it sold around 200,000 copies in its first week alone. It was produced by Dr. Dre, and despite not reaching the top of the charts or breaking him into heavy rotation on either urban radio or MTV, the album went platinum. It also spawned his second most famous single, called X.
Mr. Big Chief, Xzibit uses like a visa. I run it through and money come out.
What a childhood classic. During this time he continued to act and appeared in films like The East Siders, The Wash, Eminem's 8 Mile, The Slim Shady Show, and more. He was also featured on MTV Cribs episode and added to Madden NFL 2001 as a playable character. This won't be the last time he was featured in a video game, but more on that later. More releases followed, and in 2001, Xzibit released 2 concert films. The first one was called Xzibit Restless, Exposed, which centered around the recordings of his third studio album and various live performances. The second one was called The Alcoholics, XO, The Movie Experience. Xzibit was everywhere, from movie sets and music videos to video games. It seemed like it was never going to stop. In 2002, Xzibit released his 4th studio album, called Man vs. Machine. The album sought to duplicate the success of its predecessor and even had similar guest appearances. While it spawned 3 singles, all of them failed to chart on the Hot 100. The album itself peaked at number 3 on the US Billboard 200, and while it became his highest charting album to date, it barely reached gold sales status, let alone platinum. Man vs. Machine proved to be a bust, and after being unhappy with the crafting and promotion of his newest project, he ended his cooperation with Dr. Dre. Regardless of a minor setback, Xzibit continued to collaborate with his West Coast colleagues, Razcast and Saphir, forming a rap collective together called Golden State Warriors. Unfortunately, they had to rename themselves after receiving cease and desist letter from the NBA basketball team of the same name. They eventually landed on the name Golden State Project and even made the soundtrack for a film, Training Day, Bounce Back, Golden State. From 2000 to 2003, X to the Z was at the top of his game, and while it seemed life couldn't get any better, little did he know that only a year later, he would be introduced to a new audience, which would boost his popularity even more, making him an international superstar. In 2004, Xzibit was hired to host an American television series, which was produced by MTV, called Pimp My Ride. The show starred him as the host, who brings an individual's wrecked car to West Coast Customs, where it undergoes a complete makeover, or as they used to call it,
Please, MTV, Pimp My Ride.
As a child, I remember watching every single episode, thinking what they did with people's cars was insane. Now, as an adult, I can clarify that they were indeed insane, but in a completely different way. If you are living under a rock or have somehow never seen a single episode, I'll give you a quick rundown of what happens on pretty much every single episode. The show starts with the participant showing his car and trying to convince MTV that it needs to be pimped. Afterward, Xzibit shows up at their doorstep, they almost faint and start to jump around like maniacs around him in complete disbelief.
Yo, Mary. Joe.
Xzibit looks at the car, cracks a couple of jokes, and takes car back to the West Coast Customs, promising the owner a complete makeover of the vehicle.
What's going on over there? Let me get 1 coffee and a dozen glazed donuts. I gotta stay up late today. I got a long shift.
This is where the show starts to get interesting. Each car had its own custom pimp, tailored to the personalities and interests of the owners. For example, a Need for Speed Underground fan had his car painted to look like one specifically customized in the Need for Speed video game series, while a bowler had a ball spinner installed in his truck. A badminton player had a badminton net installed in the back of his Dodge Caravan, and a surfer got a clothes dryer in the back of his Volkswagen Type 2. If you somehow think that these upgrades could be somewhat useful, not all of them were so lucky, and for some, the upgrades that they received were ridiculous, to say the least. For example, one guy got a cotton candy machine in the back of his car, or another one got Mustang pimped when they added a bubble-blowing tailpipe.
Well, let's go to the back. Come on, Shonda, let's check this out.
Bubbles, oh my goodness.
It's a new emission thing in California. You know, your car runs on soap and water now.
On the show, luxury embellishments are a must. The mechanics have done such things as replace a dome light with a chandelier, add plasma TVs on pretty much every single episode, an espresso machine, and a wood-paneled yoga chamber. The show has been a hit not only because of the extreme car makeovers, but also because Xzibit is highly entertaining.
I know you're scared. Get that pink slip ready, man. Yeah! yeah. We are sure, baby. Woo, woo. Woo, woo.
But you can have cotton candy with nuts. That'd be tight.
Cool, you can eat all the nuts you want to, man, Mike. I'm cool.
Welcome. Buckle your seatbelt.
This is a real bucket. I'm gonna drift.
One episode featured a 19-year-old college student named Christina Allende and her 1992 Honda Civic. Christine used the car to take her 83-year-old grandmother to the doctor, the store, and to church, which was a problem because the doors were hard to open. In addition, she was driving on a compact spare tire, and the alarm was so out of whack, it went off spontaneously.
Christine! Come on, man. Yeah!
He's Xzibit! He's a famous rapper!
In typical Pimp My Ride fashion, her car got a full makeover, complete with purple paint and racing stripes, a rear wing, spoked wheels, and a velvet and leather interior. Especially for grandma, mechanics included a seat massager and doors that flip up like those found on a Lamborghini. Just imagine pulling up to church in this bad boy. Regardless of how ridiculous the show was, it was for sure entertaining.
Remember when your car came here? The alarm just kept on going off and off and off. Well, what we did was put a custom alarm in it.
Yo, back up. This Xzibit. I'm warning.
And it is estimated that the half-hour show attracted an average of 2.6 million viewers. Pimp My Ride was one of MTV's most popular shows with countless viewers worldwide. The show was especially popular in the United States, where it ranked second to The Real World. And the best part was that Xzibit was the face of it. In 2004, he also released his fifth studio album, called Weapons of Mass Destruction. The album mostly focused on social and political issues. He ranted about President George W. Bush and the war in Iraq, tying his hardcore rap in the large global scale. In the track Cold World, Xzibit draws a parallel between an American inner-city dweller battling addiction and a child living in a war-torn Baghdad unable to escape US bombs. He reminds listeners that the people in his song, they too have a choice in life. They can live with their problems or die with them.
Two choices, you can give it up or you can just die with it.
The album was once again a commercial flop compared to his third studio album. It peaked at number 43 on US Billboard 200 and barely sold 500,000 units. Once again, Xzibit wasn't happy with the promotion of the album and blamed the label for the flop. In anger, he left Columbia Records and decided to go independent. Despite his music career reaching stagnation, Pimp My Ride's success helped his career to open up even more. He put his music career on pause and decided to focus on acting and show hosting. He hosted MTV's European Music Awards in November of 2004 and even made several film appearances from 2004 to 2006. He filmed alongside Jennifer Aniston and Clive Owen, Derailed, made a guest appearance on CBS series CSI Miami, played as Zeke in XXX State of the Union alongside fellow LA rapper Ice Cube, and was continuing to host Pimp My Ride. Around this time, he did know that television acting is a challenge, saying, "Television is way different from hip-hop, like you only get one chance to do it right, whereas hip-hop, you can do it till you get it right. TV is kind of like you only get one chance to actually get it off." In 2006, he starred in the drama Gridiron Gang as Malcolm Moore and made 2 guest appearances in the animated sitcom The Boondocks.
And we about to pimp his grandfather's car.
2 years had passed since his last project, and in his typical 2-year cycle, he released his 6th studio album called Full Circle. The album was released independently through Koch Records. This was his worst performing album so far. The album reached number 50 on the US Billboard charts and was a commercial flop, selling merely 120,000 copies in the United States. Despite being filled with features from The Game, Too Short, T-Pain, Snoop Dogg, Corrupt, and more, none of the singles were able to chart. In the same year, he also worked on 2 video games, Def Jam Fight for New York, The Takeover, and Pimp My Ride. The video game for Pimp My Ride was a disaster. It was panned for its awful physics, lack of replay value, and repetitive gameplay.
What the? I don't even know where to start with this one. Come on, let's go get her. What's going down? Marcia, I'm here to pimp your ride, homegirl.
Yeah! I knew it! Oh my god, my ride's gonna get pimped! What?
With his music career going downhill with each release, it was more prominent than ever that his days as a successful rapper are coming to an end. Looking back, up until 2007, the most successful thing that he was doing was Pimp My Ride. While at first glance, it appears that he was everywhere, none of the projects that he worked on took his career to the next level. Despite appearing in a couple of movies and TV series, they were only one-time gigs, and with his music career derailing and Pimp My Ride being the only thing keeping his career active, unfortunately for Xzibit, new problems were looming on the horizon. 2007 was the start of Xzibit's downfall. The problem started when after 6 seasons, Pimp My Ride was eventually cancelled. While the real reason why it got cancelled is unknown, there were a lot of problems with the show. As mentioned, car customization was often made according to the owner's character. But what if the character is not that interesting? Well, it wasn't a problem for MTV. Some rides that MTV felt looked too fresh for the shows were intentionally damaged to make them more fitting for the narratives. For example, Jay Glazer, a former contestant, had to be subjected to a demeaning storyline for his episode on the show. His car was littered with cigarette butts, and he was told to say that they were smoked by his grandma, who can't stop smoking.
My grandma smokes a lot of cigarettes. In every crevice, nook and cranny, you'll find one of these. There are cigarette butts everywhere in that car except for the ashtray.
Another example was previously mentioned guy who had a cotton candy machine installed in his car. His name is Seth Martino, and according to him, he was forced to play a fat guy that can't stop eating candy. He said, "I know I'm fat, but they went the extra mile to make me look extra fat by telling the world that I kept candy all over my seat just in case I got hungry."
As you can see, I like to have some candies every once in a while. You never really know when you want to have a snack.
After doing some digging, I found a Reddit post made by him where he was talking about his experience on Pimp My Ride, and I think important detail to mention is that he complimented Xzibit by saying he was a very nice guy, joked around a lot, smoked a lot. Not only the stories and reactions were often fabricated for TV and marketing.
Check out your brand new ride. Oh yeah, baby! Woo! Yeah, thanks, man! Woo! Check it out! Check it out! All right! Woo! Yeah!
But after the pimping session, cool toys that were installed were not only impractical, not functional, and often removed right after the camera stopped rolling, but also led to electric failures. For example, Seth Martino claimed that the TV installed in his car stopped working after a while, and that he couldn't use the LED light installed on the seat because it heated up. The DeLorean-style rear door was also removed after the cameras went down because it impeded the back seat belt functionality, and the lack of a dome on his cotton candy machine made it impossible to use. The most unfortunate contestant was probably Justin Derringer and his 1997 Toyota RAV4. The screen and pop-up champagne server in Justin's ride were removed immediately after the cameras went down. Despite all of that, the flashiest parts like butterfly doors or LED lights were left, and soon Justin took to YouTube to post his new car. Unfortunately, only a couple of years later, his car would eventually catch on fire due to bad wiring. While he was probably the unluckiest one, with his car burning down completely, multiple people claimed that their cars also broke down immediately after filming. With all of this in mind, Xzibit caught a lot of slack for all of this. People were making fun of how ridiculous the cars were and blaming him for all the failures, despite him only being a show host and having nothing to do with the pimping. The show's cancellation not only affected his public reputation, but also his pockets. 1 year before Pimp My Ride's cancellation, Xzibit reportedly made $500,000, but only a year later, according to documents, he merely made $70,000. The same year, he lost his license during the Gumball 2007 rally, where he drove a black Jaguar XJ220 and received a penalty when he got caught during 160 in a 100 km/h zone. He also left Rove Live Studios in Australia before a scheduled appearance. When asked about it, according to Xzibit, he walked off the set after taking offense to comments made by Rove staffer, allegedly said, "You know, we come a long way just having you on the program." Xzibit took this as a racist remark, although the staffer claimed that they were referring to his status as a late booking. In 2008, tragedy struck his personal life when the son Xavier was born prematurely on May 15, 2008, and died only 11 days later. Due to his loss, Xzibit for the first year did not release an album in his former 2-year cycle. He fought to the loss by starring in 2 films, The X-Files I Want to Believe and American Violet. He was also featured on The Alcoholics Live from Rehab concert film that year, and in 2009, he played the mob leader in The Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. Unfortunately, his financial troubles only increased further as he had to file for bankruptcy in July 2009 and once again in January 2010. Both attempts were dismissed and his houses and belongings were taken by the government. In the late 2010s, it was reported that Xzibit owed more than $900,000 in unpaid federal taxes. Despite being in a terrible financial situation, Xzibit kept his faith, and after 6 years hiatus from music, he returned to the scene with a new album called Napalm. While it only reached 150 on the US Billboard 200, music critics really liked the album. The album featured a lot of guest appearances like The Game, E40, Prodigy, The Alcoholics, Be Real, Wiz Khalifa, and more. The success of the album let him get back on tour, and it even grew from 16 shows to 18. He also started a weed company with Dr. Dre called Brass Knuckles, and according to him, it helped him to finish off paying his taxes.
It's a wonderful company. It's definitely changed my life. I was able to go back and take care of everything that was kind of like hovering over my head. I had $1 million tax debt.
Taxes?
Yeah, I had $1 million tax debt. I had all these other things that I was able to go wipe all of that out.
Dope.
And so, yeah,
So that company's doing well.
Yeah, it's doing really well.
But unfortunately, a couple of years in, and they were hit with multiple lawsuits. The first lawsuit made against Brass Knuckles was accusations of them using pesticide in their weed cartridges, and this one was immediately preceded by another lawsuit launched by 3 brand investors who wanted compensation for monetary losses and what they claimed to be a breach of contract. It's important to mention that all of the lawsuits made against them were false, and they won every single case. Unfortunately, the damage was already done, and they had to leave. What seemed like a loss at first, this became the best lesson he could have learned, and in the next couple of years, it helped him a lot when he started yet another weed brand. But before that, he once again dived into acting, appearing everywhere that he could, and was also featured on Dr. Dre's album, Compton, on the song Loose Cannons.
That's why they bring X and the guillotine out to stop these niggas from running their mouth.
In 2016, the recent success helped him to land a role in the TV series Empire, and only a couple of years later, in 2018, he finished paying off his taxes, allegedly cutting a check for more than $200,000. Thankfully, he managed to get rid of the burden that he had to carry on his shoulders for such a long time, and opened up his new weed company called Napalm. The company's name was inspired by his album, but for some time it was dragged online because it allegedly was a sore reminder of a chemical agent that was used in firebombs during the Vietnam War. Xzibit did apologize because he didn't know, and it wasn't his intention to co-sign on the harm Napalm has inflicted on the Asian community. Regardless, the weed brand was a great success for Xzibit and is doing really great to this day. Xzibit's life has been a testament to the power of perseverance, hard work, and artistic expression. From his humble beginnings in Detroit to his rise to fame as a rapper and actor, Xzibit has shown that with determination and a strong sense of self, anyone can overcome adversity and achieve success. Despite the hardships, he always managed to find the light and continued to move forward no matter how bad the situation was. His legacy is not just about his music or his acting, but about the impact he has had on the world around him. He has inspired countless people to follow their dreams and use their talents for good.
I am not a granny. I'm a dude.